Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is titled Metamorphosis of Realities and Simulations. And I would like to speak about a unique relationship I've noticed between this, how man has a relationship with his own truth, which can at moments come across to him as elusive and limited. Yeah, the voice is loud. Okay. I guess I should say welcome anyone who's listening. The idea follows that I pretty much was wondering about manifestation. I was wondering about the phases of evolution that the human being has gone through. You see, the human being, aside from the DNA kind of being said to be the book of life, the human being is a representation of all that has come to be him, or all that has moved him so far. As I often say in these talks, I divide the world every moment just simply observing. Sorry, guys, just a second. Sorry about that phone call. Yes, I was saying that I've kind of looked at the human being, wondered about the phases of evolution, and I've kind of realized this whole thing about truth is about either you're doubting reality is a simulation, or in some sense, beyond the simulation, there's reality. For all those people who entertain the notion of spirituality, they are considering more to the universe than its observable dimensions. And when the mind cannot see something, for example, like if there's an object in the room right now, that's part of your objective realm, I say. So you can see that object. But for example, a thought is different. To see a thought is more like seeing the significance of a movement in a moment. As objects and matter is hovering in the void, so is our thoughts. But our thoughts hover in the matter that is hovering in the void. Therefore, our thoughts have a significance to our material existence. You know, the same philosophical idea. If there's nobody in the forest and a tree falls down, does anybody hear it? Did the tree fall? You see, it's as if there is an objective component to the human being that is required to be there in order for the subjectivity to have somewhere to orbit around. You know, sometimes playfully I have seen thoughts, kind of visualize them to be in my head. And I have also visualized thoughts to kind of orbit around me, like subtle particles. I have also seen them as rivers, as a sort of dynamism of attention upon a subjective landscape. As if when a thought changes, so does the world, you know, the meaning of the world. You can look at any object, you can even kind of every day write down a sentence about who you think you are and come to notice that with a subtle emotional variation, the identity feels different. Every environment you go into, it's as if the voice of the environment echoes in your subconscious. the whole point, I gotta get this out, this idea that I had was, when I say metamorphosis of simulation, of realities and simulation, it's this kind of loop I saw, not loop, a sort of cyclical thing that is occurring, as if human beings started off from, let me see how I can put this. You can say the unconsciousness of the evolution of the creature before it became self-aware was a sort of simulation of nature. We stepped out of that simulation by, in some sense, entering a conscious reality. What that means is this moving creature on the surface of this planet was like, whoa, I'm here. You know, it attained that kind of sensitivity to how life is being itself. Because before you were named, you're just the eyes of nature that have opened, are you not? From an unconscious reality, we came into a conscious simulation. From a conscious reality, we are becoming aware of from a conscious simulation, we're becoming aware of an unconscious reality. As we find in the works of many philosophers such as Carl Jung, where they suddenly notice, wait a minute, it's not that there's unknown skies in front of man's eyes, there's also unknown skies behind man's eyes. And these skies deserve to be explored. And that means that the inner reality of the human being has in some sense reached a certain point where it is not enough, it's not enough for it to just be a sort of object or to be a sort of subject just in a static position as if it's a snapshot photo of a self. It's more of being involved with a dynamism. I got this clue from nature. I'm telling you, just go look at nature, you'll learn so many secrets. And the clue was simply this, that many species, once they come together, in some sense join, there is a sort of rhythmic movement that occurs. You see fish swim together, you see birds fly together, you know, you see wolves run together, and in some sense it is suggesting the common denominator once found is a rhythmic movement, is a dynamism, right? I find this dynamism for the human being, because we have associated ourselves to be static images in our consciousness, any sort of movement will lead to a sort of wonder of the unconscious, you know? And to be honest, it was very humorous for me when I noticed this, because I have, if somebody asked me, hey man, what do you believe in? I would tell them I don't believe in language, that's for sure. That I have noticed the hollowness of language. I have noticed the promises it has given my subjective realm, yet it was not aligned and oriented to the present objective reality. You see, we had not had in history an opportunity to separate these dimensions. People thought they were just one thing. For me, reality is this. It's a constant explosion, and then all of it comes back to a singular point. It goes multidimensional, comes down to a singular point, and it's like this wave that happens in history, and it echoes everywhere. So in some sense, Voltaire, this French atheist, many people I find, he says a quote that many people don't comprehend, and I don't know if I've comprehended it, but I have a certain view. Voltaire says that even if there was no concept of God, it would be necessary to create it, because nature's movement takes the multidimensional, that which is unconscious, and brings it to a singular conscious point. Right now, you as a person, or your whole singular conscious point in the subjective realm is your name. Did you know? Your life is, your subjective life is centered around the name and the idea that is accepted as you. You know, it's a very kind of profound statement to say. I'm going to get into the Voltaire quote in a second, but just I got to say this. It's a very profound thing to say that in some sense, no one can be thoughtless in a world where the evolutionary intelligence has developed through thought. You see, I speak of it as if it's a war of language. It's not just people walking in the street, there are also ideas walking in the street, but these ideas are walking in the streets of people's minds. So this relationship of a kind of coin flip between reality simulation, and trust me, it's all going to a causal point, whether the causal point is considered unknown or known. That's it, guys. I'm telling you, knowledge is a very thin simulation that can crumble instantly in the presence of direct experience. And direct experience means no indirect language is needed, dear listener. If you do seek, it's like I'll never forget it, there was a sort of attitude in the eyes of a man named Shri Prabhupada, who was kind of like, I saw a YouTube video of this guy who started the Hare Krishna movement in the 1980s, where like the hippie movement was occurring. So this guy took like a sort of strict Indian discipline and principle, and he took it to the West. At a time where the idea wasn't prevalent. Man was forgetting God, especially after Friedrich Nietzsche said, God is dead and man killed him. And if Freud, who said God is dead, if Freud heard Friedrich Nietzsche's quote, he'd realize his father is dead. The archetype of a personality, and this here now I can interject and flight into the Voltaire quote I was saying. When Voltaire said man, in some sense, God, even though the concept of God, if it was not created, it would be necessary, because man requires to personify. Think about it. You're personifying every moment of your life, are you not? You're living the life of a person. So guess what? When you look at the unknown, your mind will also personify it. And now it will either treat that personification as a separate subjective reality, or it will think that personification is the truth. Do you know how many people, as I'm speaking right now, on this planet feel they are seeing God, feel they are being God? Do you know, it's unbelievable. It's just like how death is a complete dissolution. You can say this enlightenment thing is a complete unification. At some point, language does not carry the torch. It cannot go further, and like a kind Olympian must pass it on. So let me get into this again. So that's the end of the kind of Voltaire thing, guys. Pretty much man's personification of the whole moment and the cosmos would lead him eventually to wanting to personify the unknown. In personifying the unknown, something unique happens. The personality that's been cultivated reemerges with its own free will. You see, you have so much free will, you can give free will to thoughts. And what that means is when man's mind was wondrous about the unknown, he's like, whoa, how is that moon up there? How is that sun there? How is the whole cosmos here? And eventually these questions, the ego must forget them. This is why people don't like too deep of a conversation, especially before it's Friday night. It's like we are a creature of many levels, many intensities, many elevations. You're a pilot of your own attention, and you are your attention pretty much. And at its core, it is so simple. Once you realize that simplicity, the complexity doesn't burden you. The complexity becomes the simulation. The simplicity becomes the reality. Right now, it's the opposite. Complexity is real. People are like, man, this suffering situation. Like, what is this universe? What is this Milky Way galaxy? Milk, in some sense, in yogic culture, they would pour it on statues. And what I mean by that is they had a sort of divine notion, and it's kind of like, where is the value of the whole thing? And the value of the whole thing is, on some level, it's too big. That means you can start up 1,000 divine agencies in the city of your mind. You can have many sorts of images acting as you can just, it's the intensity of your attention. It's pretty much like how intensely you're holding an object, right? So I'm saying people are holding ideas. Let's say the guy made a mistake, that mistake gave him an idea, and he's holding on to that idea like an object, like firmly gripping it, right? And the person thinks it's gripping that idea to such a degree, they think they are that idea. They think beyond the realms of that linguistic architecture, there is no sky. That's the danger of a belief, ladies and gentlemen. It's when I say belief, you got to realize that it's not dangerous to look at an idea. You have freedom. You can do anything. You can go anywhere, you know, that nature allows. But still, the relationship with the unknown is the edge of the tribe. And that is where we are being pulled to internally. You have a responsibility now in 2019 to actually care for your mind, for this intelligence that you are. But care for it in not just external maintenance, just in the inner poetry of subjectivity. I am telling you, no great poet is great. They are just walking in a great world. That's the secret, ladies and gentlemen, that if you don't permit the world behind your eyes to change, how can the world in front of your eyes have meaning? Do you know that's the issue with nihilism? It's a laziness towards the inner realms. If Carl Jung saw a nihilist, he'd be like, you know, get off your chair and go explore the unknown. What are you doing? So night and day, realities and simulations. There's many ways you can start it, of course. Because I treat thought like a design, I consider you don't understand how much of this world is just floating designs. And they require your attention directs them. Do you know what I mean by that? That means right now as I'm speaking to you, I'm not thinking to myself, I'm something. I'm watching. That watchfulness, that simple present watchfulness is the source of, I find, I call it the inventor's sphere. It's a source of endless design, because design is not being seen as like cut up food which we put in the fridge. Design is being seen dynamic, alive, as if when you give your mind freedom, do you know how much freedom your mind will give you? That's where the inner rhythms begin to align with the external. That's a very fascinating moment in our history. You see, it's the fact about what are you waking up to if you're asleep. If you consider right now, you see nowadays, I'm telling you, I have this prediction that Western society's metaphysics is going to end up being a simulation. Technology is stealing Western society's natural mythology. You see, it's like right now people are wondering, okay, was there a God or not? But in the future, children are gonna open their eyes and be like, am I in a simulation? In a digital simulation? Am I lost in a video game I cannot step out of? And who's playing this? You know? The questions arise due to the design of the world. And this is why it's so important to realize the relationship a concept has with its context. If the concept chooses to see it is not from the context, it will be a stranger in a large place. If it chooses to see itself as a part of the context, in some sense, it can never be alone. Do you see? It's like a switch in the mind. What I'm telling you is literally the attention is being navigated differently. Because we are, believe it or not, this is going to sound extremely hilarious, even though we have objective physical bodies, but the value we keep is subjective. That means thoughts don't rule the world. Thoughts are us now. We think like that in civilization. You know, we show a picture of ourselves and that is us. But that is limited. Man's mind is too unknown to be defined in one way. You think you have been the same being from the beginning of your life. I remember kind of laughing. I saw New Age, the New Age community is, of course, I'm trying to point something out. That's why I'm kind of scolding the New Age community. Oh, hey, Idris, welcome to the chat, man. Let me just finish my scolding the New Age community. Here's the thing, guys. It's stories can take your whole life. They can consume you. They can devour you. There we go. That's even though that sounds extreme, but the reason they devour you, they keep your attention locked to one way that life only is possible. You see, the thing is, the singular mind has to have goals. The multidimensional mind is aware. It's aware in various dimensions. Forgive me, guys, but I have to get certain ideas out right now, and so I'm going to acknowledge the chat in a little bit later. The relationship life has with itself, it's a changing one. That change is interpreted dualistically. That duality divides the attention into two ways. That means the world works in chaos, the world works in order. Throughout the life, like when the person wakes up and they live the day, what's occurring is they're finding themselves in many moments of reevaluation, simply because the creature is moving in a landscape, the environment is revealing itself anew. So the first realization is that we are a traveling entity. Okay, you are traveling through, you require, this is why physical exercise and all this is important. But physical exercise back in the day was just okay, let me just say, let me not move, let me let me just not fly off, okay. Anyways, this division of attention into chaos and order meant for it had to be a yin yang symbol. The reason is that the yin yang symbol is like chaos and order are touching each other. Do you see the yin yang, the small circle in the white area and the the circles in the yin yang symbol? They are not circles separate, they're touching, they are the intersection of both dimensions. That means, think about it this way. It's like, imagine your elbow, the edge of your elbow is touching the edge of the elbow of someone else. Okay? Now, it's as if you are your own universe and they are their own universe, but as your elbows touch, the two sides that are touching are the yin yang, are what is connecting chaos and order. What that means is language is simulation. It's very easy to unlock. You pretty much realize it's oscillating only between a dualistic dimension, singular dimension. It's as if 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. That's how our minds are working, and binary is 0 1 0. You know, we are like, I think if man had a program, it would be 1 2 1 2. You know, singular dualistic, singular dualistic. Now, in the duality, that's where infinity lives. In the singularity, that's where eternity lives. Eternity is an attribute, shapeless infinity. It is the context of infinity, you know. It has to do with the personification of time. So anyways, this creature, as it lives its day, because it experiences chaos and order, good and bad things, let's say, that happen to it, wanted things and unwanted things that happen to the being. Okay? It's like I feel the human, this 1-2, constant 1-2, zero is the space that's holding it all. One is how the attention is awake, and two is how far this attention has divided itself. It's like the only way you can say a group of separate particles can feel they are aware of each other is because they're aware of the same space that they're all in, right? Language is a simulation. What you're hearing right now are sounds being translated based on your inner library of, interpretation. It's so. This is why compassion and love was like very crucial, because it meant give freedom. That means it's strange. I'm telling you, live one day where everything, where you just let the world be free. You have no opinion on the day, just as if it's a citizen. The whole planet, the whole manifest waking moment. Imagine you give your whole moment of being freedom. What does that mean? Freedom of it for it to do what it wants. Now, what I mean by that is that it's kind of like a slow melting of this ice by the light of what it is. You are a changing being. There's a dimension to you that is changing from the beginning. It doesn't matter who you think you are, it will change. It's just like how the whole universe has a sort of expansion or a sort of entropy. Like it's moving. Okay? Now we are on the back of this giant turtle, thinking the turtle is not alive, thinking the cosmos is lifeless. I feel the eventual conclusion is that we are individual shaped conscious creatures. What's the opposite? What's the opposite of being an individual shaped conscious being that thinks the particles are leading to the intelligence? The opposite is if the creature thinks it's a field, first of all, a field of intelligence, it's going to be unconscious. It's going to be the opposite of individual. It's going to be collective. And instead of singular, it's going to be multidimensional. So do you see every moment secretly is revealing the opposite of its design? You can say this is like free imagination. Once you see the chaos and order of things. And once you realize duality, this is like a sword and shield that the wise man understands why they need to be put down. Because it's as if like, what I mean by that is like, the difference between you saw this in martial artists, right? Martial artists, it was as if they attained incredible power but kept it in balance. So it's as if they were showing off how much of balanced individuals they were, rather than this current culture we have where it's our imbalances that are like, drawing attention. You see, it's as if I want you to think this is such a fascinating image. If I can get this across, this talk is done. I've done justice to this talk. I want you to see that imagine every thought that a person had is a sphere of a sort of unique color. Okay, so imagine there's many different colored spheres moving in the air. Now imagine many of these colored spheres, they're not all moving at the same speed. That means the thoughts in history, the subjective designs that are embraced by the attention live on. It's like the reason we know about Socrates because somebody gave a shit back in the day about what he said. Excuse my language, but So for me, it went from searching for a mask to put on the face of the world. I got tired of it. To be honest, I'm like, what is this? So what? I find a belief that's true. Okay, now I wake up every day being a different person, having a different relationship with the moment, and thinking that the past relationship I had should define me. Do you see? It's as if it's very simple. You forgive your past and you bless it and you live in the present. And the past is like the kind of, I consider the past to be a shield. Your future is the sword. When I said intelligence can be in the dualistic dimension kind of considered as a shield and a sword. It's very complex because the metamorphosis out of the linguistic simulation is to a reality where there requires to be contentment with duality. So this was kind of the fear of like, should the idea of a singular truth be introduced when everybody is engaged with their kind of like we are still struggling with dualistic truths, you know? What I'm saying is, I wondered about the evolution of the future generations. Like, let's say, if we were to wonder what's going to happen, like 10,000 years from now, or like 1,000 years. Okay, 10,000 could be, it's like too inconceivable, but but I'm saying, like, let's say 1,000 years from now. First thought that comes to mind is that it starts from the unfathomable. The unfathomable is empty. This is why man can never conceive. To be honest, you don't see your birth and you don't see your death, you know? So the concept of death being considered in the material plane, sure, you know, but there's too many unknown factors to be certain about things in only one way, you know? The strange thing is, imagine the linguistic simulation, the language simulation being the cocoon. In the metamorphosis process, all the cells of the caterpillar die. And as the last cell dies, the new cell of the butterfly is born. What it means is, in nature, we're getting evidence of a sort of continuity beyond design. As if, like, it's not just, again, Olympians passing torches, it's cells too. Now, where it's going to lead has to do with the evolution of the current linguistic simulation. So what's happening now with even we see in media, like this whole wave of political correctness? Let me tell you what's happening. It's literally people realizing they're not thoughts and getting angry. Anything you observe, you are kind of outside of seeing, right? It's like you can't observe your brain, but you know it's there, right? What I'm saying is the observable can be engaged by consciousness. The unobservable is the unconscious moving the conscious. And it's kind of like this personality that one has kind of been like a bowling ball thrown into this manifestation, just every day, kind of like acquiring meaning, acquiring shape, design, various data, being exposed to various landscapes, various personalities, various ways that intelligence is revealing itself throughout the day. Sometimes I wonder, did man really leave the cave when every day he wakes up it's as if we have stepped out of a cave of unconsciousness? I have fought with language through various moments in my life doing intense things that suddenly it was as if karma slammed me down. It's as if, imagine running at full speed at something and then like suddenly being a sudden stop, you know? Imagine a subway not slowing down then suddenly stopping, you know? It's as if that sort of intensity karmically. And many moments when I observed, when I was kind of like watching what I felt was inevitable that was happening, it was you stand in you become a mind pretty much, like you always are a mind in your waking state. But what I'm saying is like the attention divides. It's like the conscious attention, if the objective reality is too chaotic, has to accept a position of order. It moves into the subjective realm. So you become a creature of mind after you're a creature of matter. And after, when I say after, the reason you become after, once you, it's like after, I think after non-existence of the objective being, there is still subjective existence of the presence of the being. And that subjectivity is present in the field. I don't know how to say it, but like I think scientists acknowledge this idea. That energy and the laws of nature, they work through fields, you know, electromagnetic fields, you know. So this is a realization of consciousness being product of a field. Now I noticed something fascinating, guys, because at some point my mind wondered, if I wanted to make a conscious robot, how would I? And I wondered about how intelligence moved. And eventually I remember seeing this kind of like, I don't know if it was this leaf being moved by the wind on the ground. I saw this leaf, the wind moved the leaf on the ground. And for that second, it felt to me the leaf was alive. And I realized, wow, the great deception of objective matter. And that deception is kind of like, it's like the wind wasn't, the leaf had no intelligence, but the wind was a movement, and that movement resulted to that object appearing intelligent. So it was as if it was the wind moving the leaf all along. It was, you know, but my mind for a second, that leaf came alive and I realized unknown originations of movement before prior expectation are what we consider alive. So if AI can come and say things and do things that we as a human species has never conceived, we would automatically feel it has intelligence. Do you know? The thing is, language is being built by every experience. What kind of creatures would be beyond language? Would there be cause and effect still? Because we're creatures of design, we will carry out the design. By carrying out the design, that's where throughout the lifetime of the individual human being comes the inner calling to truly look at what their civilization is before their eyes close. That is all that Mr. Within is asking. That you, dear listener, wonder what is here. Honestly wonder once in your life what is here. That's in that moment you are an original being. in that emptiness where you can now observe and see again without, it's as if that clean slate, that's it. That's the Pure Lands. The thing that, just like how the dualistic is touching the singular is touching the void. There is a bit of the singular in the void, and that's the fascinating thing. Dimensions are touching each other. You know? That's a strange way to kind of see the material plane of existence, but I find its various dimensions touching each other. And so I don't know why, but I called it onion style. It's like the multidimensionality of an onion. Okay? That the senses of self are concentrically within one another. That means there are various versions of yourself. It's not like thoughts are at times separate. It's kind of like a cone or a cylinder. Okay, it's like a cylindrical kind of movement of thought into thought into thought into thought into thought into thought into attention into thought into thought into thought into thought into attention. Do you see what I mean? Like there's a sort of movement there. Okay, and so that stillness where the caterpillar is becoming the butterfly, in that moment it is heaven and hell and everything that is manifestation in a moment. Because I'm telling you, it's at some point you'll realize this world doesn't need followers. It needs builders. And not objective builders. We need to, in some sense, explore the forests behind our eyes. And I've playfully called that the Pilot's Academy. The pilots of consciousness, people who navigate as their attention consciously. It's like consciousness is an evolutionary opportunity, guys. You know, but it's evolution now. That's the fascinating part. So it's like we have to have relationships with that which is observable. Yeah. So what that means is the simulation is observing the reality. The reality is observing the simulation. So if you feel this world is a simulation, you're going to probably think truth is inside. You are truth. You're going to think you are truth if you think the world is an illusion. If you think the world is real, you're going to think the inside is a simulation, is an illusion. And the atheistic secular mind has gone to seeing the objective world is real, so the inner reality is a simulation. Pretty much electrons are hallucinating. Atoms are freaking out, you know. I find that the unknown is here first. This is why you shouldn't listen to the voice of any man. You should listen to the voice of how your mind is experiencing the moment. You know, there are certain truths of the heart that are unavoidable. When you realize that, you truly become alive as a being. You notice how the butterfly has no clue that it was a caterpillar. Time is a cocoon. And the metamorphosis is towards the inconceivable, as the poet Rumi says. I died as a mineral. There's more to it, guys. I need a drink right now. I died as a mineral and I became a plant. I died as a plant and I rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. Why should I fear death? When was I less by dying? I shall die once more, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on to that which no mind has ever conceived. That means he saw the evolution of the whole world as the evolution of his whole moment. This is why these dudes could write a lot. They were poetically inspired because the universe was no longer just a lifeless thing. The moment your environment's lifeless, guess what? You're next. You make too much the world inanimate, it's going to devour how your mind feels it can be animate. And that's what's happened. It's like you can say creatures as they okay. These creatures moving on the planet, they were harboring inner visions. Now they got into tribes, and as they got into tribes, there was the requirement to communicate. The requirement to communicate led to the development of language. The development of language led, kind of like speech, it led to the birth of the identity, of the subjective identity. Once the subjective identity had a subjective position, now it could be valued in the story of civilization. Society is a story. It shouldn't be, it's like neither true, it's neither true or false. It's neither good or bad. It's just what story comes next. Do you see? We are storytellers in time and space. And space and time are part of the story. I have two options of the future. The future, two things can happen, to be honest. It's either going to advance or it's going to end. Now, because inevitably everybody dies and people change, we have created a collective being that lives longer than us. So for me, it's like 4 billion years of evolution. Okay, let's take that into consideration. And then, and then we kind of see, like, what are we left with now? And I'm telling you, there needs to come as kind of playful rebellion of a sort of beautification of the environment. That means there were certain civilizations and cultures, when you entered that kind of place, it was like your greatest self was being invited, not you were not being kind of scolded by the shade, you know. Every person is a representative of their species. You're representing human beings to anything else that could potentially be out there. In this cosmic landscape of incredibly unknown and known things, the behavior of the creature is important to consider now. Your navigation of your identity has to do with your behavior. Your behavior has to do with your free will. Your free will has to do with what decision it takes. Any decision taken evokes a realm. You cannot move without being something. What I mean by that is the mind is very tricky. And that's something the ancients said. The mind is a trickster. They also said it this way, where they said the mind is lousy master but a good servant. So how do you have your mind serve you? At first you got to acknowledge your mind, right? So you come to acknowledge your mind as a human being, and you suddenly come to the realization, whoa, my mind is being my whole sensory perception. all my senses, whatever they're doing, whatever, wherever I am right now, it's like, this is my mind. Wow. So you see your mind as being your whole moment. Now check this out. Now, when you wonder about what's in this moment, the contents of this moment, some creative force moves symbols through matter. Just like how a child imbues personality to its teddy bear when it's young or something, you know? Similarly, it's as if we imbue intelligence. It's like the various thoughts you have on something are like the various subjective souls moving in those objective bodies. So what I'm saying is, it's more about attention projects. It's kind of like a light beam coming out of your eyes and hitting something and reflecting off whatever and coming back into your eyes, right? It's as if the attention fragments in every turn, in every movement you have, the emotion is also changing. You know, you cannot move too much without your emotional self changing. This is why when people get overworked, you know, like that moment when they come home and just, you know, fall down on their bed is like, okay, what greater heaven could exist? What I'm telling you is, it's the speed of civilization, and technology is unnecessarily making cultures really changing the value of the culture. Do you know? It's like there is a cultural evolution, you know, you can't jump too ahead without consequences. Any person who wants to escape from somewhere, when I mean escape from somewhere, I'm saying subjectively, okay? So be playful here in regards to how you hear me. But what I'm saying is, there is this viewpoint that a lot of imagination and whatever that's connected to, it's the mirage, it's a mirage in the lifeless. It's either a real simulation it's either a live simulation in a lifeless reality, or it's an alive wait how would I say this? I'm either ascribing the origin of the moment to the known or the unknown, which kind of means it's either one common, it's like the real is here and we're a simulation in it, or the real is the simulation and kind of what we think is the, what do you call it? Sorry guys, my attention's being incredibly drifted off right now. Just a second. Change leads to the new. Let's just kind of close that chapter like that. It's a relationship, guys. I tend to think, I'm conscious of the dualistic realm, so any idea for me is not one idea, it's two ideas simultaneously. So anything I see, it's as if I have to consider the environment of attention, like how the attention looks at a phenomena, and as it looks, it's as if it's like one after another waves of thoughts are kind of hitting. It's like this river of thoughts moving in an object based on somebody looking at something and having various ideas. So it's kind of like the attention directs the subjective movement to an objective point. And that subjective movement, if you keep your concentration and a kind of singular attention, that subjective movement moves in that objective point. So it's so I think that's believe it or not, Shintoism in Japan was like that. In Shinto, they saw the matter as a vessel for souls. So it's like nobody had one soul. It was like a highway of souls moving through everything, you know. various ways to kind of approach the unknown, all of them as valuable as our attention can do something with them. Manifestation without change is a dead picture. Immortality is a dead picture. The lifeless, the inanimate. It's so easy to identify with with matter, but it's like the questioner, where the question is arising is as significant as to wonder about as, you know, the external. And that's what's happening, by the way, with the crystallization of the identity as the stage, as the main stage. I'm kind of seeing like we have such a long way to go. We have to build the global stage. That means it's like only the beginning of it has started. Somebody's laid a brick. The poet Attar says, "Be happy for this moment. This moment is your life." And that happiness is the opportunity. I find that's why the happiness is there. You're seeing the power of the animate, something that can move. It's like the material kingdom bows to you, the plant kingdom bows to you, the animal kingdom bows to you. Who do you bow to? And suddenly man sees the unknown. And so man's story is the challenge. Do you see? It's as if it's like the chaos is shouted, you know, and the order is going to shout back by putting a mirror in front of it. Like it's Rumi says silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. I can see how the veil beyond the dualistic dimension, beyond language, the edge of it is in silence. Silence is the unknown. Silence is the unknown. So what I mean by that is that where is language hovering? These personalities that we as human beings think we are. Where are they? It's like the presence of a moment, in a simple way, in a complex way. They're how the personality has fragmented itself in various experiences of environment. So, guys, I need a quick intermission, so I'm going to pause it here. Feel free to tune in or tune out. Take care. I'll be back in a couple minutes, guys. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Needed an intermission there. All right, to continue. I'm just kind of wondering about this relationship between simulations and realities and how it's kind of. I constantly try to repaint the picture to see it's kind of like me mining for certain crystals of meaning by wondering about the moment again, you know? Let's start from, again, I want to take it to the moment where, from an unconscious movement of nature, there came an awareness of self. And I consider that the edge of the objective evolution was the kind of birth of the subjective evolution. I want to also see it like as if we woke up from a simulation of, it's like mindless movement to a sort of singular mind. I find that the unknown, after some point, one's relationship with the unknown, once it becomes honest to self, you just are simple. It becomes a very simple moment of just watching it. What happens is eventually you notice ways that designs are moving, and so really it's like as the concentration on the meaning of life, of like not fearing conception, but kind of marching through. Kind of like we can say from the dream of a movement, we awoke to a self. Now that self is considering itself a dream again, and it's kind of wanting to awaken again. You can say it's like a evolution. It can also have a foolish reasoning, you know, where it's the creature looking at something, seeing a certain value, and seeing that value in itself. It's as if not only you can imbue, you can look at an object and kind of give it any name, but at the same time, the name of that object or whatever way it's present also influences the subconscious. You can say that when they say, let's kind of, I'm going to bring back that master servant mind code. The subconscious serves the conscious when the conscious serves the unknown, the unconscious. Once the conscious mind trusts the unconscious, the subconscious mind trusts the conscious. There we go. Guys, I think I just made Carl Jung proud with that statement. I often wonder what empathy, sympathy, what all these mean. They mean attention to a commonality of experience. It's like we have two relationships with animals. One with animals that are external to our eyes, like in front of our eyes, other creatures on the planet. And we have a relationship with the animal, with the creature we think we are. Now that relationship with the creature that you think you are is very crucial, because that limits or makes limitless your exposure to life. When you don't fear the temporary, you're like, it's like they came to some guy in the street shouting, he's like, oh my God, man, life is temporary. And then the other guy was like, okay, what can you do? You know, and it was a sort of mentality of accepting the inevitable. Then you feel you're free. Why, you know, that freedom doesn't have to only occur through the impurity of desire, often said in kind of wisdom traditions. You see, desire was frowned upon because desire meant you're not seeing yourself. You're seeing something outside of yourself more than yourself. To really see yourself as just a sort of contentment with how you're a creature of an emotion of a moment, you're the creature of a thought of the moment, and you're also a creature of an objective position, you know, a material being as well, you know. Even though I speak about the unknown, I don't say we try to escape our knowledge or something like that to get to the unknown. You got to be comfortable with the world that is here to see a world beyond this. By the way, anybody who's listening in, you can always share in the chat section. You know, these live streams, I can bring that into the chat, into the live stream. You know, I'm gonna do something unique right now. Let's I feel a wisdom quote tunnel coming up. I'm just gonna search for thought. Let's see what people have said about thought. Here. My wisdom quote tunnel, guys. These are like kind of segments in my show where I kind of tell you about I just dive into the quotes about one either theme or one person. So anyways, guys, here. Marcus Aurelius. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore guard accordingly and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature. Yeah, so the kind of quality of thinking you have leads, your happiness depends on that, Marcus Aurelius is saying. And he's saying guard it, that means be conscious, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature. That means you can say a virtuous man is welcomed by the nature of his world. You know, of course, we got to take into consideration Marcus Aurelius was also a Stoic. You know, so he, at that time, it wasn't like profound kind of, the way they came into terms with the unknown was through their attitude. It was a development and evolution of attitudes, not per se an evolution of complex realms of subjective coordination and the unknown. Like for me, it's like a topology of various points of meaning and various dimensions, kind of being a sort of landscape. There's a landscape to subjectivity. It's as if sometimes I have a thought has entered my mind, and I've kind of, like, in that moment I was like shocked, like I was offended by the own thought that had come into my attention. In that moment, it was a moment where I'm like, how dare this thought, like, you know, come into my attention. And it was, that thought was a chaotic thought, and I realized it's again the mind seeing the opposite. So if I talk about good things, your imagination sees the good, then it's like, what's the opposite? Then you wonder about the bad. You know, if I talk about a bad thing, then your imagination's like, what's the good thing? And you know, it wonders, you know, after that too. I find that I think it was Shunryu Suzuki, or it could have been Zen Master Dogen, or it could have been totally somebody else. I'll continue with the quote on, guys, but I gotta say this. It's they asked him what is life, and the guy said it's like you build a boat, you get into the ocean, you swim in the middle of, like, you're on this boat in the ocean, and then the boat sinks. And if you just take in what that sentence is saying, is you do something in this life, and then it's like a shutdown. Like computers shut down, the biological intelligence shuts down. Various parts of it begin kind of, as Guru Padmasambhava would say, kind of like dissolving. The elemental dimensions of the being begin dissolving. If like it's the ultimate freedom. It's like the death is the ultimate freedom that the mind gives to the unknown. So anyways, guys, let's continue with this quote tunnel. Eleanor Roosevelt says, with the new day comes new strength and new thoughts. Nice. Alexander Graham Bell says, concentrate all your thoughts upon the work at hand. The sun's rays do not burn until brought to a focus. Swami Vivekananda says, we are what our thoughts have made us. So take care about what you think. Words are secondary. Thoughts live. They travel far. A guy on Wall Street on a phone will probably agree, you know. Maria Montessori says that the development of language is part of the development of the personality, for words are the natural means of expressing thoughts and establishing understanding between people. Wow, there we go. High five to Maria Montessori. Buddha. Buddha's up next, guys, in the lineup. Buddha says we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves. I don't feel joy follows. You are in a joyous state. So it's like, I could totally see the Buddha's poetry here. Like, I agree with the Confucius, who's standing right beside Buddha. He says, the more man meditates upon good thoughts, the better will be his world and the world at large. Oscar Wilde says, most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions. Their lives a mimicry. Their passions a quotation. Wow. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe pretty much says, thinking is easy, acting is difficult. And to put one's thoughts into action is the most difficult thing in the world. Yeah, there's definitely a truth to that. But passion, there's like an inspiration would be there to kind of surpass that block. Abraham Lincoln, who's standing beside Goethe, he says, books serve to show a man that those original thoughts of his aren't very new at all. Abraham Lincoln never lies, guys. He never lies. He's the archetype of truth in politics. St. Augustine says, my mind withdrew its thoughts from experience, extracting itself from the contradictory throng of sensuous images, that it might find out what that light was wherein it was bathed. And thus, with the flash of one hurried glance, it attained to the vision of that which is. Of that which is. So let's get into this. He says, my mind withdrew its thoughts from experience, so desireless, extracting itself from the contradictory throng of sensuous images that it might find out what that light was when it was, yeah. So what it means, wow, what an incredible poet. He says, this unknown intelligence in the moment no longer associated thoughts from its experience. So the guy's mind stopped having thoughts. He became a full observer. He says extracting itself from the contradictory. What that means is the unknown is moving knowledge. Okay, extracting itself from the contradictory throng of sensuous images, this endless manifestation of color, light, different particles that move in our attention. You know, and it says that it might find out what that light was when it was bathed. So pretty much he's saying it's like my mind came out of all those images of what light was making the moment kind of to be. My mind withdrew its thoughts from experience, extracting itself from contradictory throng of sensuous images that it might find out what that light was where it was bathed. Pretty much it's like why the light in your eyes is now. And he says, and thus, with the flash of one hurried glance, it attained to the vision of that which is. That means in an instant, again, in an instant awakening. What does that mean? It's like a particle whose thought the particle was intelligent the whole time, acknowledging, oh my God, there's a field of intelligence here. And how dare personalities start war? Immanuel Kant says thoughts without content are empty. Intuitions without concepts are blind. Wow. I find that what Immanuel Kant is kind of suggesting here, he's saying like a personality without a world is empty. And he's kind of saying like intuitions without concepts are blind. Yeah, that means if the intuition is just kept, if the inner wind doesn't externalize, the inner animate living pattern doesn't externalize, of course it's blind. It's not by, what he means by blind is it's like it's in its own dimension. It doesn't step out of it. That what's an inner movement is not externalized. And eventually, here's the cool thing, because what these talks are not for, like, you got to feel it out, because I don't know who's listening to these talks, right? But what I'm kind of leading to is wondering about the new archetypes. Okay, it's like we're either defining the moment in accordance to past imagery, we're either defining the moment in accordance to just internal, whatever we like to imagine in the moment, you know, or we're just staying in the present, standing our ground. We're watching. We're watching how the world moves as in front of our eyes and behind our eyes. And that watchfulness cultivates into mindfulness. That means once you study your environment, you suddenly get your attention awake, kind of stretches out. Okay, and like what happens is there comes the will. It's like the experience reaches a point where it realizes the new is required to be accessed. That need, that urge for the new, what's next, what's next, what's next, that inner urge, eventually it speeds up, and when it gets close to the speed of light, it's as if like your attention moves in accordance to a field. It becomes a rhythm in a field of intelligence. So I'm saying we are rhythms in a field of intelligence, thinking in these rhythms there are particles, these rhythms are moving, and we're thinking those particles are the only thing that's here. The unknown is here as well. Napoleon Hill says man alone has the power to transform his thoughts into physical reality. Man alone can dream and make his dreams come true. René Descartes says, except our own thoughts, there is nothing absolutely in our power. That's true. That means you can imagine, your imagination has more freedom than the objective realm. Yeah. W. Clement Stone says bondage is subjection to external influences and internal negative thoughts and attitudes. Katori Hall says don't let others put thoughts into your mind. That takes away your self-confidence. Yeah, keep your mind, climb the mountain by starting at the top, pretty much. Mark Twain, drag your thoughts away from your troubles by the ears, by the heels, or any other way you can manage it. Oh, he means kind of like be present in the moment. I think that's where what he's implying there. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, great men are they who see that spiritual is stronger than any material force, that thoughts rule the world. Yeah. Thoughts definitely rule the world, and it's like anybody who realizes that, it's like, you know, there's your greatness, there's the freedom and the internal existential authorization that you were waiting for. It's like, what are you waiting for? The moment is here now. You are staring into a cosmos that the ancient Greeks considered originated from chaos. From chaos, the order has spoken. Friedrich Nietzsche says thoughts are the shadows of our feelings, always darker, emptier, and simpler. Yeah, wow, there we go. What a philosopher. Yeah, thoughts, as if I just got this vision that, okay, let's say a thought, I say thoughts have architecture and they also have shadows. What that means is, again, the implication of the counter design of that thought. Henry David Thoreau says, do not trouble yourself much to get new things, whether clothes or friends. Sell your clothes and keep your thoughts. Friedrich Nietzsche says, those who cannot understand how to put their thoughts on ice should not enter into the heart of debate, into the heat of debate. Those who cannot understand how to put their thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of debate. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Pretty much, I think he experienced some rudeness. William Shakespeare says, give thy thoughts no tongue. And by saying that, he's giving his thoughts a voice. But I think what he means is be aware of the inner realms, pretty much. William Shakespeare also says, words without thoughts never to heaven go. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. Yeah. That means they won't be remembered if they don't have a way to be personified. A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. Mahatma Gandhi. Maya Angelou. I liked to write from the time I was about 12 or 13. I loved to read, and since I only spoke to my brother, I would write down my thoughts. And I think I wrote some of the worst poetry west of the Rockies. But by the time I was in my 20s, I found myself writing little essays and more poetry. Writing at writing. Fascinating. Yeah. Every person, I find every writer climbs their way up the mountain to meet the rest. That means it's as if like every person's mind has a voice, but that voice can externalize in many ways. Mahatma Gandhi again says, always aim at complete harmony of thought and word and deed. Always aim at purifying your thoughts and everything will be well. Yeah, that complete harmony of thought and word and deed, we're evolving there, I find, as a species. Mahatma Gandhi again says, I took the vow of celibacy in 1906. I had not shared my thoughts with my wife until then, but only consulted her at the time of making the vow. She had no objection. I mean, of course, you got to understand he was a religious man, right? Like he was Mahatma Gandhi. People should know, like he had a sort of yogic mindset behind his eyes, you know. There's a story of Mahatma Gandhi, actually, maybe I should say this, where Gandhi is like sitting in a room and suddenly one person from one of the townspeople comes and knocks and it's like, Gandhi, what should we do? Everybody's waiting for you. You know, and Gandhi's like, go, like tells the guy to like, wait, you know, the answer's not come to me. You know, and the guy leaves and he's in meditation, you know, Gandhi. And he's thinking what to do. And he's waiting for the moment he's waiting for genius. And so what happens is the guy comes knocking again. He's like, Gandhi, people are waiting. What do we do? You know? And Gandhi's like, the answer has not come to me. Again, he stands. He's waiting. And then the next time where the guy comes, before he says, Gandhi stands up. And there's a sudden moment of silence. And the guy just stares at Gandhi. And Gandhi starts walking as if this man received the vision. He saw something. Something was possible in his vision. You know? And as he goes, what Gandhi does is starts walking. It's like this famous YouTube video of him, you know, you can find, where in that video, Gandhi is walking and there are crowds of people just crowding around him as if like his vision was direct steering, you know, was navigating, was piloting that moment, you know, and all the people follow him. And Gandhi goes to the beach and he grabs a handful of salt, and it was due to the colonization of like India. It was as if salt was illegal to take. So it was as if Indians didn't have access to their own salt. And this was kind of a non-violent revolution. You know, so Gandhi's kind of non-violent revolution is because he fought for something that was a human universal value, you know? I feel like children should be kind of forced to memorize the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and wonder about where the evolution of that perception goes. Marcus Aurelius says our life is what our thoughts make it. Marcus Aurelius again says the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Where have I heard that before? Marcus Aurelius again says, such is your habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of your mind, for the soul is dyed by the thoughts. Plato says, how can you prove whether at this moment we are sleeping and all our thoughts are a dream, or whether we are awake and talking to one another in the waking state? Good question, you know. Buddha says we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts we make the world. There is no external proof in a changing world. I think that's what Plato was trying to get to. So his question is just pointing to a universal view, you know, a universal truth. Voltaire says one great use of words is to hide our thoughts. Voltaire says men use thought only as authority for their injustice and employ speech only to conceal their thoughts. Men use thought only as authority for their injustice and employ speech only to conceal their thoughts. Well, of course, speech it cannot be the thought. The thought it has access to a context that's real behind the eyes, but the speech, the word, of course, is kind of detached. The word is extension from thought, you can say. An extension of thought, objective extension of thought. The objective existence of thought is words. You know, so you can say the word is of course lifeless. The thought is giving it life. So he says men use thought only as authority for their injustice. I think it's not that. I think we got to take into consideration the limitations of speech, and it is just the nature of the temporary, you know. Okay, there's this other quote by Voltaire, but I kind of get a feel Voltaire maybe didn't say this. But anyways, I'll read it. Meditation is the dissolution of thoughts in eternal awareness or pure consciousness without objectification, knowing without thinking, merging finitude in infinity. Yeah, I doubt Voltaire said that. But maybe, you know, who knows. Theodore Roosevelt says, great thoughts speak only to the thoughtful mind, but great actions speak to all mankind. Albert Camus says, all great deeds and all great thoughts have a ridiculous beginning. Great works are often born on a street corner or in a restaurant's revolving door. Wow. Goethe says, all intelligent thoughts have already been thought. What is necessary is only try to think them again. Taylor Swift says, the cool thing about reading is that when you read a short story or you read something that takes your mind and expands where your thoughts can go, that's powerful. Okay, nice. The unknown is to be celebrated. This was also the attitude of the poet Rumi. Dwight D. Eisenhower says, don't join the book burners. Do not think you're going to conceal thoughts by concealing evidence that they ever existed. Wayne Dyer says, everything that's created comes out of silence. Your thoughts emerge from the nothingness of silence. Your words come out of this void. Your very essence emerges from emptiness. All creativity requires some stillness. Okay, this whole thing, your very essence emerged from emptiness, sure. But is emptiness emptiness? That's another question. Oh my god, there's like hundreds of Wayne Dyer quotes here. Okay, Eckhart Tolle. Okay, let's bring Eckhart Tolle into this. Eckhart Tolle tells us, in the egoic state, your sense of self, your identity, is derived from your thinking mind. In other words, what your mind tells you about yourself, the storyline of you, the memories, the expectations, all the thoughts that go through your head continuously and the emotions that reflect those thoughts, all those things make up your sense of self. Okay, it's heavy. Eckhart Tolle also says memories are thoughts that arise. They're not realities. Only when you believe that they are real, then they have the power over you. But when you realize it's just another thought arising about the past, then you can have a spacious relationship with that thought. The thought no longer has you in its grip. Bertrand Russell says indignation is a submission of our thoughts, but not of our desires. That's very true, wow. Bertrand Russell also says the slave is doomed to worship time and fate and death because they are greater than anything he finds in himself, and because all his thoughts are of things which they devour. Yeah, so I feel kind of Bertrand Russell probably like the ancient Greeks. There's a sort of chaos to things. Paulo Coelho says, once I found this... okay, no, okay. This is... Okay, Paulo Coelho says, once I found this possibility to use Twitter and Facebook and my blog to connect to my readers, I'm going to use it to connect to them and to share thoughts that I cannot use in a book. If you really can't use a thought in another book, that's... Anyways, let's continue, guys. Victor Hugo. The omnipotence of evil has never resulted in anything but fruitless efforts. The omnipotence of evil has never resulted in anything but fruitless efforts. Our thoughts always escape from whoever tries to smother them. The omnipotence of evil has never resulted in anything but fruitless effort. So I could see how the ignorant are blind. Now he says our thoughts always escape from whoever tries to smother them. So that means if the ignorant were blind and they wanted to smother thought, the thought will leave the moment. Yeah. I get it. It's kind of like the thought's untouchable. Victor Hugo says there are thoughts which are prayers. There are moments when, whatever the posture of the body, the soul is on its knees. Wow. Victor Hugo says certain thoughts are... okay, wait, I just read that. This is another one. William Blake says the man who never in his mind and thoughts traveled to heaven is no artist. That is so true. Lucius Annuus Seneca says, I will govern my life and thoughts as if the whole world were to see the one and read the other. For what does it signify to make anything a secret to my neighbor, when to God, who is the searcher of our hearts, and all our privacies are open? Yeah, I guess he's kind of saying like that. This is Seneca, ancient Greek philosopher, I think. Yeah, so this is the kind of like the pure state of honesty, they say. It's okay to be alive, simply. Blaise Pascal says, if we examine our thoughts, we shall find them always occupied with the past and the future. Not always. How long is this page? Okay, we're getting to that. Arthur Schopenhauer says wicked thoughts and worthless efforts gradually set their mark on the face, especially the eyes. Emotional impression, I think he's implying. Carl Sagan says skeptical scrutiny is the means, in both science and religion, by which deep thoughts can be winnowed from deep nonsense. Yeah, some people want to drink pure water, All right, let's read a few more, and we'll reach the end of this talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson says, for me, the most fascinating oh my God, everybody's fascinated by Twitter. Okay, let's read it. For me, the most fascinating interface is Twitter. I have odd cosmic thoughts every day, and I realize I could hold them to myself or share them with people who might be interested. Aeschylus, I think it's an ancient Greek person, Aeschylus. He says, to be free from evil thoughts is God's best gift. Ah, man. Wasn't worth the smelling, guys. Charles Darwin says the highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Yeah, navigate consciously, pilot consciously. All right, let's go to the end. Mario Shiba says, always keep your mind as bright and clear as the vast sky, the great ocean and the highest peak, empty of all thoughts. Always keep your body filled with light and heat. Fill yourself with the power of wisdom and enlightenment. Mario Shiba also says, the heart of a human being is no different from the soul of heaven and earth. In your practice, always keep in your thoughts the interaction of heaven and earth, water and fire, yin and yang. Chanakya says, God doesn't dwell in the wooden, stony, or earthen idols. His abode is in our feelings, our thoughts. Wow. That's why being aware of your thoughts is kind of seeing how the unknown is moving knowledge. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, I butchered the name, but anyways. He says, I would like to express the thoughts of a man who, having finally penetrated the partitions and ceilings of little countries, little coteries, little sects, rises above all these categories and finds himself a child and citizen of the earth. Nice. Ramana Maharshi says, you need not aspire for or get any new state. Get rid of your present thoughts, that is all. Robert Kiyosaki says, the power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that there was value and power in being aware of my thoughts and how I express myself. Mozart says, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart says, I cannot write poetically, for I am no poet. I cannot make fine artistic phrases that cast light and shadow, for I am no painter. I can neither by signs nor by pantomime express my thoughts and feelings, for I am no dancer, but I can by tones, for I am a musician. Okay, Mozart's pretty much saying he can express himself through music. You know, great. Thank you, Mozart. You know. All right, let's see. One last one. I'm just going through this list. Oh my God, it never ends. Oh, it never ends. That's the kind of website it is. Oh my God. Okay, guys, it ends. Sorry about that. But the quote tunnel, I hope it was helpful. I mean, it's like I constantly, as I was going through it, I had this perception that it's like moments of history have something to say about other moments of history. You know, every person's eyes has a value in the designs they bring, the designs they evoke, what they care about in their lifetime. I think the definition of true power was just material maintenance. But I think what it comes to an attentiveness and awareness of the organization of your mind to yourself. So you become responsible. You're like, oh my God, this life is made for independence. Death is the most independent thing. But the issue is, it is too soon to, it's like let nature worry about that, you know? So what I mean by that is that in some sense, you are never who you think you are, so there shouldn't be anything too extreme done physically, I find, you know? Because the attention changes. I'm telling you, when I was 10 years old, I had no idea I would be giving these talks. Do you see how much the unknown gap was? So to judge one's value based on just one snapshot value of a moment and making an extreme decision based on that is unnecessary. You know, so it's like we have to care at least for what evolution has led to. You know, it's like what did all your ancestors fight for? You know, I think nowadays it's like our ancestors fought for the shyness of creative people in society. I don't know. But anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. I'm kind of painting, it's like I'm getting a river of thoughts behind my eyes. I'm seeing various ideas kind of move at different speeds, and I'm just sharing them, you know. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings, and namaste.